Welcome to another Ziva Math video. In this video, we will teach you how to order real numbers. We'll start with ordering fractions and decimals and include examples with fractions, decimals, percents, and square roots as our examples build in difficulty. You can use the chapters to find the type of examples you need. We are going to place these numbers in order from least to greatest. To make comparing the values easier, we're first going to turn any number that's not in decimal form into a decimal, starting with 12.5. If you know that 1/2 is 5/10, then you don't have an extra step to do here. But if you need to calculate it, we divide the numerator by the denominator to turn a fraction into a decimal. 1 divided by 2 is 5/10. So 12.5 is 12 and 5/10. We'll do the same thing with 12 and 2/5. We'll turn 2/5 into a decimal by dividing 2 by 5, which is 2/10. 12 and 2/5 equals 12 and 2/10. Now that we have all the values in decimal form, we need to compare them. The easiest way to do this, especially for a beginner, is to line up the numbers with the digits lined up. And if you make sure that your decimals are lined up, then your digits on all sides will have to be lined up as well. In this last column, adding zeros may help you keep the digits lined up and for comparison purposes. Adding the 0 to the end does not change the value of any of these numbers. The first thing I notice is that the whole number of each value is 12, so we'll need to start our comparison in the tens place. The least value is 0, so 12 and 9/100 is the number of the least value, so it will go first. I'm going to cross it out of my list so I know I'm done with it. Marking out the numbers or checking them off as you order them can be helpful, especially if you're ordering 4 or more values. The 2 is the next lowest value, so 12 and 2/10 will come next. 12 and 2/10 is 12 and 2/5 in decimal form, so when we put it in the list for our final answer, we need to use 12 and 2/5. We'll cross it off as we finished with it, and the next lowest value is 12 and 5/10, which will go in the order as 12.5. And when we cross it off, we can see that only 12 and 8/10 remains. These values, in order from least to greatest, are 12 and 9/100, 12 and 2/5, 12.5, and 12 and 8/10. We are going to place these numbers in order from greatest to least. Probably the most important tip I can give with these types of problems is to pay close attention to the order you're putting the numbers in, as it can vary problem by problem. In order to place these numbers in order, we first have to put them all in decimal form. We'll start with 2/3 that you either have memorized this conversion or you're dividing the numerator by the denominator. 2 divided by 3 is 6/10 repeating. Remember, the bar above the 6 tells us that it is repeating. Next, we need to turn 5/8 into a decimal by dividing 5 by 8, either using a calculator or by hand using long division. 5 divided by 8 is 625 thousandths. Now we still have 65% that also needs to be in decimal form. To turn a percent into a decimal, we move the decimal 2 places to the left. The decimal is here behind the 5, and we're moving it 2 places to the left. 65% is equal to 65 hundredths. Now we want to compare the numbers, so we're first going to list them, making sure that the decimal and therefore the digits are lined up. The ones digit in each number is 0, so we'll need to move to the tenths place. Remember, in this example, we're putting the numbers in order from greatest to least, and the 7 is the greatest value. 7/10 will go in our answer first, and we'll mark it off that we've used it. Now we see that there's a 6 in the tenths place for the remaining numbers, which means we have to move to the hundredths place. For the 6/10 repeating, we don't see a digit in the hundredths place. Because this is a repeating decimal, we aren't going to place a 0 here, we're going to place a 6 because that digit is repeating. This is our next greatest value, and this number will go in our list in its original form, 2/3. and we can cross off that we've used it. The 5 is the next greatest value, and 65 hundredths was 65%, and it needs to go in our order as 65%. And when we cross it off, we see that our least value is 625 thousandths. That's equivalent to 5/8. These numbers in order from greatest to least are 7/10, 2/3, 65%, and 5/8. We are going to place these numbers in order from greatest to least. And because we have decimals, fractions, percents, and square roots, the first thing we must do is change these numbers into decimal form. We'll start with 3/4, which you either have memorized or you're turning it into a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. 3 divided by 4 is 75 hundredths. 82 hundredths is already in decimal form, so we'll move to 78%. To turn 78% into a decimal, we move the decimal to the left 2 places. 78% is equal to 78 hundredths. This leaves the square root of 64 hundredths that you'll do on your calculator. The square root of 64 hundredths is 8/10, or we can go ahead and show it as 80 hundredths, so we'll have 2 digits behind the decimal point. Now that we have all the numbers in decimal form, we need to compare them. And organizing them so the decimals and digits are lined up makes this step easier. In this example, we're placing the numbers in order from greatest to least. In the ones place, there are all zeros, which means we have to start our comparison in the tenths place. The largest value we see in the tenths place is 8, but we have two numbers with 8 in the tenths place. This means we have to consider the digit in the hundredths place, where we have a 2 and a 0. For comparison purposes, you can think about this as 82 hundredths and 80 hundredths, or also as 82 and 80. 82 hundredths is the greater value, so it will be listed first, followed by the 80 hundredths, which was the square root of 64 hundredths in our original list, and will go in our solution as the square root of 64 hundredths. We can cross those two values off and go back to the tenths place to compare the remaining values. Each of these values has a 7 in the tenths place, so we'll need to consider the digits in the hundredths place. We see 75 hundredths and 78 hundredths, which is the larger value and equivalent to 78%, which will come next. And when we cross off the 78 hundredths, we see 75 hundredths remaining, which is equivalent to 3/4. These numbers in order from greatest to least are 82 hundredths, square root of 64 hundredths, 78%, and 3/4. In this example, we have fractions, decimals, percents, and square roots that we'll be placing in order. To do that, we first have to put each of these numbers in decimal form, starting with the square root of 81 hundredths. You can do the square root with a calculator, and the square root of 81 hundredths is 9/10. Next, we have 5/6 that we will change to a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. 5 divided by 6 is 0.83 repeating. The 83 hundredths is already in decimal form, so that leaves 80% to change a percent to a decimal. We move the decimal 2 places to the left. 80% is equal to 8/10, and we can write it as 80 hundredths as the two digits behind the decimal can be helpful in our comparisons. In this problem, we're placing the numbers in order from least to greatest. In the earlier examples, we listed the values in decimal form to the side when comparing them. In this example, let's practice comparing them from a horizontal list, the way you'll likely transition to as you become more comfortable with these problems. If you find it easier to compare the numbers listing them vertically, list the numbers vertically. You should always do any step that makes the problem clearer and easier for you. We'll be looking at the digit in front of the decimal first, and that is 0 for all of the numbers. We'll look at the digit in the tenths place next. We have a 9 and 3/8 in the tenths place. We know that 9/10 has the largest value, so it will be last when listing the numbers from least to greatest. We can go ahead and put it at the end of the list now as the square root of 81 hundredths, its equivalent. I'm going to place a check mark above the square root of 81 hundredths to show that I've used it, as it helps me to ensure that I've accounted for all of the numbers. Next, we need to consider the digits in the hundredths place, as all the remaining values had eights in the tenths place. 80 hundredths is the least value, so it will need to be first in the solution. 80 hundredths is equivalent to 80%, and we can put a check over the 80% to show that we've used it. The remaining values both have a 3 in the hundredths place, but this bar tells us that we have a repeating decimal in 5/6, while 83 hundredths is a terminating decimal. This makes 83 hundredths smaller, so it will come next, followed by the 5/6. This set of numbers in order from least to greatest is 80%, 83 hundredths, 5/6, and the square root of 81 hundredths. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to Ziva Math for more videos.